Oh, hello. Welcome to another video, and it's just about that time again. It's time for the 2022 hobby review. So, for those of you not familiar, every year I like to do a hobby review video where I basically go through my personal miniatures hobby for the year, and we usually frame that around the White Dwarf Hobby Bingo card. Now, as you can see, this year I have failed. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 squares that I didn't manage to fill. And there's a theme here, isn't there? Vehicle or monster, vehicle or monster, vehicle or monster, vehicle or monster. 2 easy units that I could have done probably if I hadn't sort of given up. And then Lord of War or Behemoth. So I don't like painting tanks, basically, and I left myself a lot of vehicle or monster type. It's not true. I do like painting tanks, just when I'm in the mood, and I wasn't in the mood this year, it seems. So, in my defence, I did move house this year and welcomed my little baby girl, who's now basically 3 months old, into my life. So, yeah, those things will take up a lot of your time, I suppose. Anyway, let's get through it and let's talk about the stuff that I have painted this year, and then at the end I'll let you know how you can join in the community next year. So the first thing I painted this year, about a year ago, more or less this time, was the Octarius terrain. It seems like I've had this painted for about 1,000 years, but we played on it unpainted for a long while, and so it's only actually been painted now for about 12 months. I did a whole video on how I did that and how I painted it, so I'm not going to go into too much sort of extra detail here. You can go back and find that on the channel. It was a really simple, I believe in really simple paint jobs for terrain. It's not that they don't deserve a good paint jobs, you totally could, but it would take you forever. So, yeah, that's the Octarius terrain. And if you're interested in how I painted it, go and look at the relevant video on the channel, please, and thank you. Plague Marine Kill Team. So this was my next project this year after I got the terrain painted. Basically, this project was born out of a frustration with novitiates. I could not win games with novitiates. If you go to this channel's homepage, you will see that it's very much it still says, oh yeah, this is my attempts to get good with novitiates. I could not get good with novitiates. And so this was my attempt at a palette cleanser. I wanted to play with something that was robust, that didn't die, that you could make mistakes with, and that you could have fun with. I wanted to stop trying to badly play to a really high standard and fail, and just actually do the equivalent of having a kick around with something robust and fun and forgiving. These were a real experiment for me. Those of you that have seen the way I've painted a lot of the stuff I paint, I like to try and paint it to an official colour scheme or an official colour palette of some kind. These, I learn after the fact that they're quite close to, I mean, it's basically the pre-heresy. I hate the Studio Death Guard colour scheme. And this is basically the pre-heresy Death Guard colour scheme, right? Which I think is one of the little warbands in the Plague Marine Codex 40k is more or less painted in this way, but I was basically just sort of going random with it. It was my first real attempt using enamel weathering and stuff, so I have some AK Interactive Rust streaks and some thinner, and I did some stuff with powders as well. I was really unsure about these for the longest time. Like, it took me a long time to think of them as good. I painted them in a lot of places looking for validation. Like, I posted them rather like Reddit and over in Glass Half Dead's Discord and in a couple of other Discords, really looking for validation, because for something my brain just cannot see these guys as being well painted or good. But then I also really like them in a way, and then I kind of look at them and catch a glimpse of them. I think, wow, those are awesome. Those may be the best thing I've ever painted. And then I look at them for a bit longer and go, are they though? I don't know. I have a very weird relationship with these models. I think I need people to tell me that the Plague Marines look cool, or at least as cool as all my other stuff. So, yeah, maybe they look. I wrote in the comments that they look rad. Do you know that's just triggering a memory? I got told off once by a student of mine for using the word. I'm too young, I'm told, to use the word rad. Right? That's like, but yeah, I thought they look rad. But then maybe they don't. Maybe they do. I don't know. I have a funny brain with these Plague Marines.
But I do really want to do more, and I really want the Bespoke Plague Marine team to come out in White Dwarf or Warhammer Community so I can bring them back and, have a little power boost with them. Funnily enough, these Plague Marines are basically free. Like, they're cobbled together from... Zimbad had the Plague Marines from the old 8th edition starter set just knocking around in this house, and he's like, oh, do you want some of these? And I'm like, okay. And then there are some of the bits where they're cobbled together with other little bits, and there's some conversions and stuff, like this guy down here with his 2 knives, and this guy with a scythe that's put together some bits and pieces, and the icon here is from the old Chaos Space Marine set. Like, you got 1 icon for each of the main Dark Gods. But yeah, I think they look pretty cool. Novitiates. So yes, I already painted my Novitiates, but basically, after I played around with Plague Marines for a while, I was like, yeah, cool. I won a game or 2 with the Plague Marines, and I was like, yeah, I want to try with the Novitiates again. I'd already painted, like, obviously my main Novitiate team. This was the second box that I was getting painted, largely because in this box there was the 2 Flamers that I didn't build the first time round. I also painted up a second little one of these to use as a counter for the mini Dialogus. The flag, I think, looks really cool, and I would probably use this flag in preference to the icon that comes on the accessory sprue, because I think that looks really cool. Enjoyed painting them, have them on the shelf, would use them at 40k. Sadly, I went back to the Novitiates for a bit. I still couldn't really win with them, and then they nerfed them, and I was like, I wasn't really dominating with these before, and now they've got quite a significant nerf, so maybe I need to look elsewhere. Yeah, I don't know. It's a shame, because I love the models, I love the concepts, I like a lot of things about them. They just never clicked with me. So yeah, Novitiates. If you want to look at how I painted my Novitiates, there's a video on the channel as well, all about painting the Novitiate kill team. Inquisitor Cortez wasn't for any gaming purpose. I just had this metal model for a long time, and I decided to paint him randomly because I'd not done a character yet this year. And I thought, well, I'll paint a character. I'll paint an old Warhammer character. There's something about the old chunky like Warhammer characters, like the ones that were in metal, that makes them really satisfying to paint. And quite quick, because they're not like absolutely festooned with detail. There's things I really like about this guy. I really like the way I did his face. I really like the little red line on the bottom of his cloth here. If I was painting him individually, like for display, I would put him on a darker base so his gold stood out more from his base. He does kind of all blend into the base here. It's only because I wanted his base to... Like, all my 40k Imperial stuff is basically done on this same style of base. And I want it all to match up together in case I ever want to use it in a big game of 40k. But as a standalone piece, his gold armor does kind of blend into that base, something chronic. I failed this year, really, to do something big and chunky, and then some troops, and then a character, and then rotate. So far this year, I did kind of some big chunky stuff in the terrain, and then I did some troops, and then I did some more troops. So I felt like I owed myself a character, so I did a character. I really like painting characters. I think they're the real kind of treat that you get when you're painting. I really like how his hammer came out as well. I just tried to make something a bit different on that. I like that. It worked really well. Never gamed with this model ever. It's just I can hardly not buy an Inquisitor. If Games Workshop just bring out an Inquisitor model, I'm there. Like, it doesn't matter. I've got more Inquisitors than I could ever possibly use. I've got every named Inquisitor. I've even got most of the Throne of Judgment just on my painting desk because I bought one off eBay that was cheaper than there was missing parts. And this thing is like made of metal pieces. And one day I'll get this Throne of Judgment together and built up and painted as well. And I'll track down the other pieces I need for it. Just 'cause I love collecting Inquisitors. I think they're really, really cool. So then, Red Hunters Reivers. So this was when the Phobos Marines were announced, but they weren't out yet. Like, we knew that we were getting bespoke Phobos, and we knew that they were going to be able to have Reivers. And I was like, cool, well, I've got some Reivers. So I painted up some Reivers. It took me ages to decide on the chapter I wanted to do for my Phobos Marine kill team. Because I like Black Templars. They're the chapter I settled on for like my main Space Marine chapter for 40k. But Black Templars and Phobos, in my head, it just doesn't fit. Because Black Templars are the guys that run in, kick down the door, scream, rev the chainsaws. You know, they're a real assault troop, shock troops, like a real kind of blitzkrieg thing. They don't suit the kind of stealth operations of the Phobos Marines. So I wanted another chapter for my Phobos Marines, and I went for the Red Hunters, who are they're an official chapter with paint schemes and stuff, but they're kind of obscure. They're featured in the Siege of Vrax, which is an old Imperial Armour set of books. And the thing with the Red Hunters is they are totally in service to the Inquisition. So much so that they frequently have their minds wiped. Like after a big long campaign, they'll have their minds wiped so they don't remember any of the secret stuff that they've seen. And they worship the Emperor, just like the Black Templars do, in fact. The Red Hunters also worship the Emperor as a god, which isn't something that all the Space Marine chapters do. It's quite weird, actually, for a Space Marine chapter to think of the Emperor as a literal god. I also then painted a Red Hunters captain. I just had the miniatures knocking around, and I was still apparently waiting to get my Phobos Marines, and I just really liked the colour scheme that I come up with and the way I had of painting them. I think this model looks really good. Like, as I said before, characters is just a real treat for me. I think he came out really well. Even the little bit of freehand on the little Auspex display actually looks not terrible. No, I really enjoyed painting this model as well. I've never used him for anything. I've never gamed with him. But he's a miniature I had, because like a lot of people, I at some point purchased the Shadow Spear, right? I think Mrs. T.I. wanted the Chaos half of Shadow Spear, so I've got all the Phobos stuff from Shadow Spear, right? But yeah, the Red Hunters captain, he's a pretty cool dude. Oh, and a shout out to Zimbab, by the way, because this guy had some gold bling on him. I didn't want to do the gold as I would normally do gold because it was too bright and eye catching. So Zim suggested like paint it silver and then just put the Agaros Dunes contrast paint over the silver, and you get kind of a more muted but still recognizably gold kind of yellow tone of gold, which I think really suits these kind of guys who are a bit more stealthy and a bit less wanting to draw attention to themselves. So that's a really cool technique as well. And then some Emperor's Children with the shiniest, goldest gold. So this was for the 30k slow grow that we did on the channel, which we haven't talked about in ages. I do intend to get back to it in the new year. It's just one of those things with bringing the baby home from hospital. It's been really hard to get set up to play a full scale, a full table full Warhammer game like 40k, 30k or Sigma. But we do aim to try and find a way to get back to it in the next month or so, because we're both enjoying it and we both enjoy painting the miniatures for it. But yeah, so this was the first thing I did for that. I've had a very expensive all-resin Emperor's Children, like 30k army, basically since 30k came out, and I'd painted very little of it, so it was great just to be pulling miniatures off the shelf that I've had for ages, and I'm painting very little of this stuff that I'm going through, apart from obviously the Kill Team releases. It's stuff that I actually bought this year. It's just stuff I had knocking around, and it feels really good to get paint on plastic, especially when that plastic's been sat around for such a long time. The Red Hunters Infiltrators, so by this point the Morok box had come out, so I started to put together the Infiltrators that I wanted to do, obviously with the various extra little bits. I bulked these out to do full squads of 5, because for me, Space Marines, like the numbers and the markings and the rivet counting is important. So these are all 10th company, which is why I got the 10 on the knee, and then these ones you can see here, this is first squad, and it's a troops squad, so they've got the troops or line or whatever it's now called, but the troops icon on the shoulder there. And then we got the second half of the Infiltrators, and again these are second squad, right? So some of these are the models from the Morok box, and then they're bulked up with some of the models from the old Shadow Spear set that I had knocking around. And then finally we've got the Incursors. Incursors are really interesting. You can just about see here, because even though in the game, in the rules, they're a troops unit, they are they have the Elite's logo on their shoulder, right, or the Fast Attack logo, or whatever it is, the 4-pointed cross. Because in the fluff of the game, the Incursors are supposed to be a more elite unit than the Infiltrators. So it's interesting because I now have I have these 3 units painted up. Plus, going back, I have the Reivers, who are an elites unit, right? So I have 3 troops and an elites unit painted up. And, I could bulk that out into being a 40k army. Like, I've got Phobos Lieutenant, I've got a Phobos Librarian, I've got Suppressors and Eliminators, And I could buy an Invicta as well. That would go with the theme and do a whole little Phobos army. I don't know when I'd ever play it, but I do really like how they came out and how they look. So, really what I want you to do, Games Workshop, is to give Phobos some decent rules in Kill Team, so I can play them in Kill Team, please. That would really float my train. But right now, that like Phobos are like a punchline to a joke, right? I mean, maybe if I'm just good enough with them, but you know, I'm not that guy. I'm not the guy that's gonna be talented enough at Kill Team to like make Phobos good, right? Emperor's Children Terminator Squad. So back to 30k slow grow, which again I still intend to resume. I had these knocking around, these Terminators, for ages unpainted, and originally they were a Terminator Command Squad, I think. And then I kind of modified them a bit to make them into this Terminator Squad. So they got combi melters because I had the combi melters left over from another project, because you have to buy, or at one point from Forge World, you had to buy a pack that was like combi melters and combi plasmas and combi flamers. And I wanted combi plasmas for another thing, so I had the combi melters knocking around, so I figured why not. I got a bit of brass etch on this guy's arm here just to mark him out as a sergeant, and I did order another packet of Phoenix Spears to get the Phoenix Spear on him there as well. But other than that, they were models that have been sat around for a long time, needing some love, and I think they look pretty rad in their purple and gold colour scheme there. I think they look pretty cool. Morok Terrain. Again, this has been under my desk for ages. Decided to paint up the Morok Terrain so we'd have a second table to play on. This is very much in keeping with the Red Hunters. You know, if you want to how I painted them, again, there's a whole separate video, I think, on painting the Morok Terrain. But these were painted up to look like the Red Hunters Marines, because to me it looks like Space Marine terrain from Dawn of War 1, right? So that's what I was kind of thinking of when I painted it. Yeah, maybe next year I'll get around to painting the Chalnath terrain. Mrs. T.I. says she's going to paint the Nachman terrain, although frankly I'll believe that when I see it, but she wants to, she aspires to, so that leaves me Chalnath to paint up, and of course I got 2 sets of Into the Dark that need painting as well, so we'll see what shakes out next year. Vampire Lord on a Zombie Dragon. I don't know, I was doing the hobby bingo, and I realised I was going to have these 2 Lord of War / Behemoth slots, and I thought, well, I need to get a Behemoth painted, and I wanted to do something a bit different as a palette cleanser, and I love Soulblight Gravelords in Age of Sigmar. I just love the way that everything else in Age of Sigmar has kind of been it's been modified, right? It's been like Age of Sigmar. It's been made legally distinct and everything else. And I really just love that, by and large, the Soulblight Gravelords are just chilling there, being these classic vampires and zombies and skeletons and going, yep, well, we're just our thing. I really love them. They're my favourite faction in Age of Sigmar, the Soulblight Gravelords, and I've got loads of them. Quite a lot of them are painted and have been painted over the years, but I had some bits and pieces not painted, and this was on the shelf. I just picked it off the shelf and go, you know what, I'm going to paint you and fill in a hobby bingo square. And I think it came out looking really cool. Yeah, really like the way that model came out. I think it looks really good. Not played with him. Not played Age of Sigmar in the longest time. Not even convinced I have the right rules to play Age of Sigmar at the moment. But I love the miniature range. And, you know, it's better to have it painted than unpainted, right? Lord Commander Eidolon. Now, this was also for the Forge World, the 30k challenge. Now, this is one of those Forge World character models, so he was alarmingly expensive. And I've owned him for an alarmingly long time. Like, this is one of those models that you get, and I was intimidated by him for a long time. Like, I do not want to ruin a model that costs this much, and is made out of a material that can't be stripped easily, right? It is an absolute pain to try and strip the paint off Forge World resin without destroying and denaturing the resin, because it's such a delicate material. I think he came out okay. Like, I if anything, I'm not totally sold on the way the base came out. Like, I don't know if you can tell that the Dreadnought is supposed to be Salamander's green if it's too heavily kind of dirtied up and weathered, but I needed to dirty it up and weather because it was just drawing the eye away from the miniature itself. So I'm a little bit not sure about the base, but I think Eidolon looks pretty good. The white on his cloak could be a bit crispier looking at it now, but apart from that, I think he looks pretty solid. It's not Warhammer, but it still counts as hobby bingo. So I painted up Count Dooku. This is for Star Wars Legion. So I was just having a random conversation with Zimbad about Star Wars. He's really into Star Wars, and I'm like, I'm fairly into Star Wars. Like, I've watched everything Star Wars that's live action apart from the Book of Boba Fett. But I've watched basically nothing Star Wars that's animated. And I read, like, some of the extended universe books as a kid. Like, I read Rogue Squadron, and I read the Timothy Zahn books, and a few others probably, But so I know a bit about Star Wars, but I really like Count Dooku. And really, it's not, because Count Dooku, to be fair, like, I know he's got stuff going on in the Clone Wars, which I haven't watched. Doesn't actually do that much in the old film there that he's in. But he's played by Christopher Lee, and Christopher Lee was just really cool. I really like Christopher Lee. He's awesome. He brings instant kind of weight and gravitas to any character he ever played. And I was talking to Zimbad, and I was joking about how I should get a Count Dooku miniature, and I should also paint because I've got a Saruman miniature, right, and have Christopher Lee doing a wizard fight with Christopher Lee from a different franchise. So he bought me this as a present. I painted it up. I was really, really, really pleased with how well I painted this up, especially the face. I think it's really come out really, really well. I even tried to get some purple into the sort of bags around the eyes, and it was really interesting to actually paint something and have really try and match it to actually the colour of Christopher Lee's actual flesh in real life, because he's an actual human person, and you can actually look at pictures of him and be like, all right, well, his skin kind of looks like this. Like, that was a whole experience that you don't normally get in the worlds of Warhammer, right? And it's one of the... I mean, you would if you're doing Games Workshop Lord of the Rings miniatures, I suppose, but it's one of the nice things about... In my time, I've painted some Lord of the Rings, I've painted this Star Wars miniature, and I've painted some... Doctor Who, like Warlord Games used to have a Doctor Who, like that is a sore subject for anyone familiar with that. But yeah, Warlord Games used to have a Doctor Who license. Man, I bet you weren't expecting this rant, right? But like, Warlord Games had a Doctor Who miniatures license, and then they decided not to renew it with the BBC, and then they were selling off some stuff, including their unreleased stuff. And I absolutely love, like, my favourite, like, childhood Doctor Who serial is a serial called Remembrance of the Daleks, which is a Sylvester McCoy, like, one of the last big, it's like the last big Dalek story, I think, since, until they rebooted it with Christopher Eccleston. And they made 2 packs of figures based around my all-time favourite Doctor Who, like, storyline, and I desperately wanted to buy them, and they don't sell them. They like, oh, you have to pay, like, if you buy like £75 worth of stuff from the Warlord Games store, like, you can add one of these unreleased Doctor Who figures for free if you buy them before, like, there's an arbitrary date, like in the new year when they're not allowed to sell them anymore. And it's like, come on, man, why? I'd pay 20 quid for the figures. Like, what? Why are you making me? So I'm not doing that. Like, as much as I want them, and it wouldn't just be 75 quid toward, like, as many different things as you want. It's 75 quid you got to spend on other. Like, I don't like any of their other stuff, so it's vexing is what it was. So you weren't expecting to see that rant in the middle of this video, but hey, if you're someone that robotically watches everything I put out because you just love the sound of my voice that much, then this is like bonus content for you. But yes, the point I was trying to make was, when you're painting something like that, where it's based on something that's a TV or a film show, and you actually start looking at, am I going to paint the actors to look like they actually look? Like, that hits differently to trying to paint someone that's never been portrayed by a human being, right? So really, really interesting. Really, really interesting. And then the Euclidean Star Striders. So I've painted these recently. I've done a whole... I won't dwell on these because they've recently featured in the channel. A whole video in their own right. I've had the plastics for these since the original release of the last edition of Kill Team. when the original Rogue Trader box came out, and I painted the Galloppox Infected because I kind of didn't like them very much, so I painted them quickly with Contrast when Contrast came out. They look okay, but these I really liked, so I did the usual thing of going, oh, I really like these, so I'm too scared to paint them. And then now when their rules came out, so when the rules came out, I thought, yeah, I'm going to play Euclidean Starstriders. Euclidean Starstriders are really cool. I mean, they're really bad, but it's better to go to a tournament and lose with a team that everybody regards as not being that good than it is to go to a tournament with a team like Novitiates that everyone is telling you is the best team in the world, and then you still don't win very much with them. So I'm going to be taking the Euclidean Starstriders to Nottingham on Saturday, and we'll see how we go. If BCP is to be believed, like, one of the best players in the world at Kill Team, Ace of Spain, is coming over to Nottingham, and B has submitted as his list Euclidean Starstriders. So either he's showboating and going, oh, I can do really well even with a team that's commonly perceived as being the worst team, or he's about to show the world why they're not the worst team, and then I'll be like, oh, well, I can't win with them. So, we'll see. That's an interesting little bit of drama, maybe potentially for the future, when everyone starts saying how good Euclidean Starstriders are. Like, watch this space. It's like everyone's talking up Poxwalkers and the Bloodied now just because certain individuals who are exceptional at Kill Team have done really, really well with them, but we shall see. And then the Christmas miniature. So my local Warhammer store runs a contest where you buy a random model. Like, yeah, it's a way of selling more miniatures, right? He gets a bunch of models and he puts them in an opaque sack, and you dip your hand in and you draw 5 out, and then you buy one of them and then you paint it up to have a Christmas theme with conversions. So I've done some things on here. I've left off his power fist here, and I've clipped away his sword that he was carrying here, and I've tried to sculpt a kind of a Santa sack on his back, which looks upsettingly like a piece of poo, but I'm not an excellent. Basically, the only time I try and do anything with green stuff other than gap filling is for these Christmas miniatures. And then also I sculpted a Santa hat, and I left off his iron jaw because he didn't need it, and he just looks like he's just a cool Santa guy. So we'll see what the competition is like for this, but I probably won't win because there's some very talented people that go to my local Warhammer store, but he's pretty cool. He's like my kind of Christmas card to the community as well, right? And then lastly, these everything else was in order, like through the year that I painted it. So like I started the year with the the terrain here, and everything else is basically in the order that I painted it through the year, except for these guys because these weren't on the Hobby Bingo, so they weren't in the same folder, so I don't remember when I painted them. Basically, my local Warhammer store again ran some painting competitions where Games Workshop gives away a miniature of the month absolutely free. So every month you can go in and you can get a miniature, and 99% of the time it's a miniature that's clipped out of a random box, and the managers get like one box of Eldar Guardians or whatever it is to give away, and they give them away within like 20 minutes of opening on that day. But at 2 particular instances this year, they did a miniature of the month where it was actually a fixed special sprue that was created at Warhammer World and sent out to the managers. And they did that for the Warcry launch and the Squats launch. And in both those cases, the shop's got loads and loads of them. So we get these miniatures for free and then paint it up and have a painting competition. This guy, I decided to do like a zombie, so he's got like zombie flesh, so that was cool. And this guy, I decided to try and do something kind of John Blanche adjacent, like super weathered, super beat up brass stuff. I don't think I really pulled it off, but the nice thing about being given a free miniature is that you can mess around with it. Like, I don't think I should have put this green on the faceplate, but then Mrs. T.I. came in and went, oh, are you going to paint his face? And I'm like, I've painted his face, because originally it was just plain and brass like the rest of him, and Mrs. T.I. was like, no, he needs something, he needs glowies on his face. So then I put this in to try and give it an eldritch glow. I'm not convinced it 100% works, but yeah, so that was my miniatures of the month entries. Right, what I want from you is to get involved in 2023. I mean, you don't need to wait till 2023. This is live now on the Discord, so you start your hobby bingo. I always start it when the December White Dwarf pops out with the bingo card in. Because people like to do some hobby over the Christmas holidays, and it's always nice to feel like your holiday hobby can count towards your bingo card rather than not being allowed to count towards your bingo card. So if you want to join the Discord and you'll find the Hobby Bingo channel or the Hobby Bingo challenges, and you can find the high-res scan I've done for this card out of White Dwarf for you, and then you can manipulate in Photoshop like I have done for last year and fill it in as you complete painted miniatures. Anyone on the server who completes the Hobby Bingo card will get a unique role and a unique colour of name, just to show off the fact that they were a champion brushlicker in 2023. You are allowed to enter non-Games Workshop models, just be sensible about it when it comes to things like the Lord of War or Behemoth Square, like just make sure it's something suitably impressive. But really the key is not to stress over the rules, it's just to get paint onto plastic. I want to encourage everybody to paint. I firmly believe that creative hobbies like miniature painting are really splendid for your mental health, and I want to just share and promote the framework that Games Workshop put out there to try and encourage people to actually get stuff painted and look back on it each year, because I think it is incredibly, incredibly good for your thinking meat to be able to do that. Maybe make it your hobby resolution for 2023. I always try and make 3 New Year's resolutions: a personal one, a work-related one, and a hobby fun one. And maybe filling in the Hobby Bingo card for 2023 is your hobby fun New Year's resolution. Final thoughts. So let me know in the comments if I'm persuaded you to join us on the Discord for Hobby Bingo 2023. Maybe you were always going to do it because you're a White Dwarf subscriber and you think it's a cool idea and you'd like to do it with a community of people around you to cheer you on. Or maybe you don't subscribe to White Dwarf but you'd like to take part of it as a member of the Tabletop Impulse community. And don't forget, the last episode I launched the Legionaries Challenge. That would easily fill in one of your bingo squares. You know, if you did 6 Marines, that could be a squad of 5+ for your Chaos Kill team. If you do any conversions instead, you could split them out and put them in the conversion spot. There's all kinds of things you could do to fill in squares with the bingo card with that project. So bear that in mind as well. You can double up, participate in both community hobby things at the same time. Looking ahead, we've got Warhammer World Kill Team Tournament on Saturday. So myself and Zimbad will be heading up from bleak and miserable Colchester up to Nottingham to play in that. I know that there's going to be a lot of people there. I think that Crit is going to be there from Can You Roll a Crit. I think that Wes is going to be there, who's featured on Glass Half Dead channel. I don't think Glass is going to be up in Nottingham. I know a lot of the Spanish guys are going to be over, so I think Ace is flying over and he's bringing a lot of his mates, so I'm sure they will finish near the top. Although with Warhammer World, you never can tell, right? Because of the number of players and the number of rounds. So sometimes you get 3 wins and you've not played anybody who's really highly skilled and you end up placing quite highly. So we'll see what happens there. But yeah, it should be really good fun. It should be really, really good fun. If anybody is around tomorrow night, the Nottingham Riverside Travel Lodge, the pub that is next door, I will try and pop in at about 9 p.m. for a pint before I go to bed. So if you do see me there, please wave and smile and say hi and grab a pint with myself and Zimbad. That would be great. Otherwise, I will see Warhammer World on Saturday. If you are going to that, do let me know. Speak up in the comments if you're going to be attending that one. And then I will try and get a tournament report out on Saturday night or Sunday morning, depending on what time I get back after the event on Saturday. And then potentially one more video on the 19th or the 20th, which I really hope to be talking about the balanced data slate. I'm really expecting the balanced data slate to hit around that time, I would hope. If it doesn't, we might do a Vet Guard First Impressions video, because they're one of the only 2 teams I've not done a First Impressions video of. And then on the 21st, I'm going away for Christmas until the 28th, so there'll be basically nothing from the 21st to the 28th unless they drop some big news, in which case you might get like a YouTube short or something like that. And that is all she wrote. So I hope you found this video interesting, dare I say it, inspiring, hopefully, to get out your brushes and get some paint onto plastic, and to actually participate in the hobby instead of just purchasing the models and thinking about one day painting them. Alright folks, I hope you've enjoyed the video, and cheerio. If you have enjoyed it, please like, subscribe, comment. Consider pressing that grey join button down below if you have the means and you'd like to support the channel further. All these things are wonderfully appreciated. Okay, so for the second time, I hope you enjoyed the video, and cheerio.